Just when you thought June was going to quietly roll along like any other NFL offseason month, a time where news tends to simmer instead of boil, boom, the NFL throws a curveball right at our face. And not just any curveball, but a full-blown blockbuster trade that has sent shockwaves through every front office, war room, and Cowboys fan forum in the country. And this one's got everything. Stars switching conferences, contract drama, team identity questions, and ripple effects that, yeah, you guessed it, hit Dallas right in the chest like a Micah Parsons bull rush. And I know what you're thinking. You're wondering how this wild morning, this sudden surge of chaos involving the Steelers and Dolphins, Minka Fitzpatrick, Jalen Ramsey, and even Jonnu Smith, ends up circling right back to America's team as they prepare for one of their most important seasons in recent memory. The 2025 campaign, a defining year for Mike McCarthy, a critical moment in the Dak Prescott saga, and a pressure cooker of expectations that just got a little more interesting because of this crazy NBA-style trade that came out of nowhere, like it knew free agency was starting and decided the NFL needed a little taste of its own player movement drama. So here's what went down. The Pittsburgh Steelers are sending Minka Fitzpatrick and a 2027 fifth-round pick to the Miami Dolphins in exchange for Jalen Ramsey, tight end Jonnu Smith, and a 2027 seventh-rounder. And you might be thinking, wait, what? Yeah, we're all trying to wrap our heads around it, especially since it started as whispers of Ramsey being on the move, then turned into a pick swap, then boom, Minka's name popped up, then Jonnu's name followed, and suddenly this wasn't a whisper. It was a whirlwind that completely reshaped both defenses and potentially shifted the market in ways most fans, especially in Dallas, aren't even fully realizing yet. And let me say this clearly. No, the Cowboys were never truly in the Ramsey sweepstakes. At least not seriously, because he was just too expensive both financially and schematically. And yeah, I know some folks had dreams of pairing Ramsey with Diggs in a secondary straight out of Madden. But from a cap perspective, it was a fantasy from the start. And yet, here's the twist. Somehow, some way, Ramsey got a raise out of this deal, which makes me want to pause and clap for the man's agent, because not only did he get a fresh start, but he locked in more money in the process, an extra $1.5 million just to put some cherry on top of a deal that already shocked the league. And while the Cowboys were never going to pay that price, that doesn't mean this trade doesn't affect them, because now teams that were waiting on Ramsey are suddenly scrambling, adjusting, pivoting, maybe even looking for that next guy. And that domino effect could cause a shift in the veteran cornerback market, a shift that Dallas cannot afford to ignore given the current state of their own secondary, where depth is a question mark and health is far from a guarantee. And listen, I like Darren Bland. The man's a ball hawk and one of the best slot corners in football. But if Diggs isn't healthy for week one, and if Kyer Elam, who ESPN recently named as a breakout candidate, can't hold the outside consistently, then suddenly you're relying on guys like Andrew Booth, Robert Rochelle, or Nashon Wright to play meaningful snaps. And that, my friends, is not a comfortable place to be when you're trying to make a deep playoff run. And that's why this trade matters. Not because Dallas lost out on Ramsey or Minka or Jonnu, none of whom were realistic targets, but because it clears the board and sharpens the focus on the guys who are available, namely Stephon Gilmore, Mike Hilton, Rasul Douglas, Asante Samuel Jr., Jack Jones, Kendall Fuller, Cam Sutton, and a few other wild cards floating out there. And speaking of Gilmore, oh yeah, don't sleep on the Stephon Gilmore situation. This is a guy who already knows Dan Quinn's system, who wanted to stay last season, and who wouldn't cost the moon to bring back for one more run as a stabilizing presence. And look, he's not the elite CB1 he once was. We all know that. But in a world where your best corner might not be healthy for week one and your secondary depth chart includes more question marks than exclamation points, Gilmore starts to look a whole lot better. And if Dallas makes it to early July or even mid-August and hasn't added someone at the position, don't be surprised if they come calling again. And I'll say this right now. Signing Gilmore doesn't just help your pass coverage, it adds leadership, IQ, and veteran savvy to a locker room that's still finding its post-Diggs injury identity. But if they want to go nickel, then hey, there's Mike Hilton. Though the red flags are flying a little after the Bengals benched him on third downs last season. Yeah, third downs, the one job you really need your nickel corner to excel at. Which makes you hesitate a little even if he is a solid run stopper. And then there's Rasul Douglas, still floating out there after bouncing around a bit and generating buzz with the Texans, though that might not actually materialize into anything real. And let's talk wildcards, because Asante Samuel Jr. is the biggest one out there right now. A dude with game-changing upside, but also serious medical concerns after off-season neck surgery. And if there's one thing we all know about neck injuries in the NFL, it's that they're no joke. They linger, they sap confidence, and more often than not, they're the start of the decline for corners who rely on agility and suddenness. So unless the medicals check out, Dallas probably steers clear. But if he's healthy, oh man, that's a tempting roll of the dice. And let me just say, for all the Twitter GMs out there screaming for a trade, pump the brakes, because I just don't see the Cowboys pulling off a big-time trade at this position, not unless a perfect fit falls into their lap, because historically, they don't overspend at corner unless it's an emergency, and right now, it's more like an Amber Alert than a 5-alarm fire. But still, let's keep names like Kendall Fuller in our back pocket, a guy who could play inside or out, and provide much-needed flexibility in a system that might need to be reshuffled if Elam doesn't pop or if Bland has to move outside. And then there's Cam Sutton, suspended last year, not at his peak, had some off-field stuff, and probably not at the top of the Cowboys board. But if you're bargain shopping and desperate, maybe, just maybe, he gets a look. Though personally, I'd rather see Hilton back there before Sutton. And listen, this isn't just about filling a body on the roster. It's about keeping your defensive ceiling intact. Because this defense, this Dan Quinn-led, Micah Parsons-fueled, aggressive, hungry unit is built to dominate. But only if it has the horses to cover downfield while the pass rush hunts. And if you've got glaring holes at CB2 or in the nickel, you risk everything collapsing once teams figure out how to neutralize Parsons with quick throws and slot matchups. So, yeah, this trade, this crazy NBA-style, off-the-wall, Miami-Pittsburgh chaos trade, actually does have consequences for Dallas, not because they were ever going to get Ramsey or Minka, but because now teams like the Packers, the Panthers, the Raiders, the Rams, the Vikings, and even the Chargers might start turning their attention toward the free agent pool, meaning prices could go up, options could shrink, and Dallas might have to move a little faster than they were planning. And if you ask me, yes, they need to sign someone. Yes, they need a proven veteran. And no, waiting until week 1 to find out if Elam is ready is not a good idea, especially with the schedule they've got coming up. And if you're Jerry, if you're Will McClay, if you're looking at that